Welcome to another episode of Misfits Social Podcast.
Greetings.
Mr. Wilson, how are things today?
Things are wonderful.
Things are wonderful.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah.
How about you, Paul?
Man, it can't get better.
He's
Can't get better.
the camera is capturing all of your emotion right now.
This is high energy for
It's
me.
high energy.
This is as good as it gets.
There's an aura.
I am
It's
excited
hitting me.
about being on this property, though. I just found out that this is 6,000 acres.
Okay, that's
10
something he
square
can
miles.
That's something he's excited
And
about.
there's-
I like numbers.
And they've
They
got
probably have some roads and blacktop.
Oh,
they've
yeah.
got roads.
Yeah. Or
We-
he'll build them.
It's like Dave Chappelle. We built these roads.
Yeah, this
We
is
got
cool.
we got a very special guest today that I'm excited about. Kaci is a big part of the supply chain for Tunco, the company that I own and run. So we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And looking to get to know you a little bit more. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who Kaci is, what's your background, what's your story?
What's my story? My name's Kaci. I'm now a full owner of West Ohio Tool. My parents started it in 1989 under a different name, initially called Buck Sharpening, when I was in school.
Sharpening?
Buck's Sharpening.
Buck's sharpening.
Yes. So my mom and dad's last name is Buckenroth, so he always had the nickname of Buck because it was short and easy for everybody to remember.
Also, he was sharpening like what kind of stuff back then?
Saw blades, beautician scissors,
Oh.
chainsaw,
Simple
homeowner stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck. Yep, in the back of
Nice.
their garage.
Nice.
Yes.
So that's how
That's how it started.
That's how it started.
Yep. So dad was one of the first two Americans to start the Anna engine plant. Wanted to go home and do his own gig. So that started in the back of their garage. And then, that didn't put groceries on the table. So they started working their way into corporate manufacturing to find more of a niche market with more profit. So they moved to an old chicken coop, we called it, poured new concrete, boosted up the floors, all kind of things. And in a short time outgrew that and went on to build their own industrial steel frame building. Mom was up in the rafters and the whole deal, putting bolts and nuts together. And I was the shipping girl on the road delivering to Amish and Airstream and various woodworking places, because at that time that's what we had. And then dad grew the business mostly in automotive, cutting tools for automotive, since that's where he came from and all the connections he had. And then eventually outgrew that building and went on to an industrial park, and we're still there.
Wow.
2000.
So just for context a little bit, when your dad was in the garage there,
Yep.
just give us a little, what year would that have been in?
1989 is when the business started. For those that are into like spiritual things, dad had no clue, but the business started on 11/11. So commonly we say make a wish when it's 11/11.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
a little crazy,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So then I think they were in the garage. Ooh, I should have brushed up on the history, but maybe a year-ish. Then worked on the chicken coop, and then we were in there a very short time. And then maybe 2 years in the chicken coop as they were building the steel building.
Wow, that's awesome.
So.
What a great story. I remember pictures of my dad's barn that would have been his dad's barn. It was like an old tobacco barn, and got pictures on our walls with all these steel drums with scrap, outside of it. It's pretty awesome how some of these our dads and grandparents started these
Didn't he make
companies.
something out of a washing machine or something, like a washing machine motor?
Yeah, he actually did. So.
Repurposed a washing
Whether
machine.
it's MacGyvering or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, he took a washing machine motor and somehow he engineered an arm, like a steel arm, that had like a little bolt on the side of it. So each time that would come around, it had a catch on it. So it would lift it up, and it was just like a drop hammer is basically what it was. But he was using the washing machine motor to pick up the hammer and smack down on these
Hey.
parts. And it would just be like,
Cheap
tink,
labor.
tink, tink, tink,
Wow.
Yeah.
The
So-
fabric of America, though.
For sure.
It is.
So is it okay to talk a little bit about where your dad got started? I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about Honda is a massive global corporation. So, and to be one of 4 key players in that and that introduction into the United States, that's
was
pretty
huge.
significant.
Yep.
Can you talk about that just a little bit?
I don't know. When I say that I have a lot of memory of Evan, we were still in school, and he was back and forth to Japan a lot. And then they were bringing lines back over. We had the blessing to be able to visit once. Stayed in a traditional Japanese hotel. Everybody slept on the floor and the mats. It was, I don't even remember what you call this, but it was a traditional Japanese bathroom. I was in high school, and it was like, no way in hell am I going in there. Like, I'm not showering with men, right? Like, that's
okay.
the full-fledged
So it was full on
traditional,
it was community.
full-on communal living with all of them.
Yeah.
Each other.
So did you just
we had
not
the
shower for a week or?
We thankfully only stayed there a night or 2, and then we went on to the next location.
Nice.
So was he
yeah.
an engineer? Was he an
Yeah, I was an engineer.
Okay.
And I think really my mom over time would call him the project guy. They saw that he was like your dad, like you just figure out how to get stuff done, right? And loved that part of solving problems in manufacturing. So that was where he really cut his teeth and stepped up, I guess you could say, his leadership.
So hired
role.
as a young man by or
Yeah, so he started in the Marysville assembly plant, and then they were recognizing the value that he brought to. And I think he has saved, at one point, he had saved them like $2 million or something. And instead of an award, here's your Carrie, thank you very much, they put his name on a plaque that's still hanging in the Tokyo main office.
Oh, wow.
that's cool though.
Wow.
So,
Hey,
yeah,
bragging rights.
bragging rights.
Very
For
much.
sure.
Very much bragging rights. So at some point, we're going from Uncle Buck's knife sharpening and tool sharpening to West Ohio Tool.
Yep. So they changed the name at some point. I think Mom saw the vision that if you're just a sharpening shop, well, companies really want to do business with you. So they changed the name to West Ohio Saw and Tool because I think they had the idea to incorporate the woodworking customers with the saw. And then over time realized this isn't really making money to live on per se. So they ended up axing the woodworking customers.
Oh, they just dropped it all together.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it really wasn't. We say overall, normally the woodworking industry is fighting over pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
So they're not wanting to pay a whole lot in supplies, material, tooling to do all that with. And there was like never any raise. There was never, sorry.
Right.
So they cut that part of the business out and changed the name to West Ohio Tool Company. And at one point, I think, of course, realized the shop is still on the back of mom and dad's property, right? So what happens when mom and pop retire? Will the business still be in existence?
Yeah.
And really was kind of our biggest key player at that point. It was kind of the biggest one yelling, what if you're all done tomorrow? We can't put faith and reliability in a supplier. And at that point, the supply chain wasn't really even a term discussed. It was just, what happens if mom and pop close the
Right.
doors and you're done tomorrow? And really, they got tired of getting phone calls the day before Thanksgiving, sitting at Thanksgiving dinner. It just like there needed to be a separation of personal life and an appearance or intention of longevity of the business.
Yeah.
So I was off literally having my second son, or my second kid, my son. I have a daughter and a son. And it was so I had him in February of 2000, and I literally took 2 weeks off. I'll never forget this. I took 2 weeks off, came back, and in the steel building that they had built, our office at that time was a picnic table and a wall that was like a bulletin board that we could, pin ideas and innovation and all the things. And I walk in my first day back from having my son with him in tow. I mean, that was a blessing at that time to take them. And there were drawings on the wall. And as the accountant at that time, I was like, what are you doing? You never asked me. You never we're not planning for this. We're just plunging forward. And that was the vision. And then we did the next thing. And then
Which
we
was?
built the industrial park building.
Uh,
And so that was in February of 2000 when I had my son. And then by Christmas, our whole team packed up trailers, cars. And then, of course, we had to hire some special lifting for all the big machines. But we moved in. I think Mom always said we were down like 2.5 days before we were up and running and making parts again. So
What it sounds like maybe Mom was a big driver for the move.
yeah, I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's time to not have people on my property showing up at my door for holiday dinners.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's so you're second generation, right?
second gen.
So you and I are the same in that.
Yep.
And I always found it interesting. There were certain aspects that, for me, I felt like were super clear as to what direction we needed to go next. But for my father, who was the founder of the business, sometimes it wasn't always that clear for him. One thing that I always go back to that he never, ever wanted to spend money on was fork trucks. Forklifts. He never wanted to spend money on it. And we got to the place where we had moved off our chicken farm and out of the next one into the next one. So you're in, you got 25 to 30,000 square feet under roof, and we're just putting Band-Aids on these fork trucks to try to keep them running. I mean, we literally spent more time replacing blown hoses, this leak, that leak, won't start, replace the starter. And finally, I'm just like, hey, we're not going to buy one at an auction again. I'm like, the amount of time that we spent and money that we spent on it was more than what we could have got a fork truck for. Mm-hmm. So finally, I was like, please, like, just let me do this one time. Let me buy one new fork truck, and we'll track it. And if it's not paying for itself, I'll never ask again. Well, we haven't bought a fork truck at an auction since. But it's pretty interesting how the different generations, as you go through it, you just see it differently because what you've been exposed to is different. Yeah. And as a founder, when you started in a chicken coop, you kind of work with what you got. Yeah. And sometimes it's harder for them to shift gears. And that was a big challenge for me and my father at times. Mm. Did you ever have anything like that?
Yeah, I think maybe being a woman in a man's world, if I could say that. I mean, cutting, many women run in a cutting tool business. And I think I had this thought process that it wouldn't be me next, right? So then what did the longevity of the company look like? But also I think because he was so frugal and they did deal with what they had. But on the flip side, he was a visionary and he knew he had to get better technology and do different things in order to take the next steps for growth. So commonly, Mom was what we call the penny pincher, and she will attest to this, even hearing it. And Dad could see it maybe before we were quite ready. Yeah, I mean, it is honestly a problem with visionaries, right? Like, you can see it before other people can see it, and hey, let's get the machine here, and we need to get trained, and we need to get ready. And then you'd be like, but we don't have any work to pay for it. So it was constantly this not really internal struggle. And I think because I didn't perceive myself taking over, and that was never really the long-term plan, I was really his right-hand support in the background, doing accounting and finance and payroll and taxes and everything on that end. So it's not that I didn't have a voice, because he would constantly ask us, but sometimes I guess maybe my perception was, this is your baby. You need to do what you want, right? Mm. Like, you've only got so much time here. And Dad was very strong and maybe overpowering for some, had a lot of confidence. And we felt his foundation, so we just ran with whatever he needed. Now, there were times we all severely disagreed, but I think at the end of the day, I would still normally not really cater to him, but it's his gig, right? Like, so yeah, it's interesting as we look back. Then the real challenge came probably more for us once we started stepping in, when I say to take over, when the health challenges started that were totally unexpected. Some diagnoses we didn't know he had. looking back, I think there were some days he didn't feel well. So when I say there were numbers that weren't in a good spot, it's not like the business was going down but I remember kind of yelling to him, Dad, this isn't sustainable. Our customers are shrinking. We've not quoted very much. We're doing the same things. But I think at that point, when I look back, cognitively, health-wise, kidneys, neuro, I think it was more than what he could do at that point. So it became a challenge. Dad was still running the company. And at one point, the fam all had to sit down and say, okay, you're done.
Intervention.
And I think when it's your baby and you create something from nothing, I don't think he knew what that looked like either, right?
Absolutely.
He and Mom were starting to travel in an RV and do different things, and he was enjoying the time freedom. But I think at the end of the day, well, we always say, I mean, based on the buck thing, the buck stops with me, and that's what he would always say. As the owner, as the creator. And then the end of 2019, he'd had this stroke due to the kidney problem. And we said, okay, what now? What does this look like? He needs to go enjoy every day. And I came back in, but I had been sent home. I chose to go home in 2016. So at that point, my dad was grooming a leadership team. And I didn't really know, but they weren't jiving with me, and I was already part owner at that point. And I remember saying, they're trying to take me out. How do you take out a family owner? And we rolled with it. And at one point I sat my dad down and I said, okay, they've made up a story. You bought into it. Now you know it's not true. How do I continue to work here? I don't see myself here. Wow. So you have a choice to make. You can buy my ownership out. I can continue helping you from my home, and I can work remotely. And that was before remotely was a thing. That was, and he said, Case, I need you, and I don't know what that looks like, but you can't quit. And I literally took my entire family, my 2 kids, my husband, we got boxes, and we boxed it all up, boxed my whole entire office up, and it was gone the same day.
Wow.
So how do you step back in 19, 3 years later, and say, hi, guys.
It's me again.
It's me again, and I'm back, and I'm gonna lead the boat. So,
And you're all fired.
Tell us.
Yeah,
Tell us about
this
that.
gets where it gets really
This
juicy,
is
I'm
fascinating.
sure.
Tell us, yeah.
So at the beginning of 2020, my husband was at home, and I said this, I'm the numbers girl, I'm the finance girl, clearly don't jive with the current people. How do we make this work, right? And my husband, of course, in the background had seen the dynamics of the family business. I shouldn't have at times gone home and aired my woes, but did, trying to make sense and find your place in all of it. And at one point I said, put up or shut up. I don't want to hear another thing. You can join me or not. I can't hear from you and Dad and all these people and try to figure out what to do. And I said, you're really great with people. You've been in leadership roles. You have an amazing way of figuring out the tough spots, the problems, and seeing from a different perspective than what I can see because we're entirely different personalities. So he stepped in February 3rd or 5th or something of 2020. And the same day or the next day, our production manager quits and says, peace out. I don't work for you. You didn't hire me. I'm gone. Okay. And we waited.
Self-cleanse number 1.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes. And at that point, we didn't really understand what was going on, but we knew they were all shell-shocked. Like, we did not see this on I think the current statement is, you didn't see this on your 2025 bingo card, right? They didn't see that on their 2020 bingo card. So after we got some time under our belt, we started clearly seeing that this was either self-selecting out or who else did we need to show the door to. COVID happened. We slammed down. The governor slammed our state down. And it had a huge impact on every small business. And manufacturing was no different. Being mainly automotive at that point, I think we saw them slam down for 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And and not to get into a side story, but my kids have had 27 surgeries, and we almost lost both of them. And since that day, fast forward, it was like flashbacks from all the panic with the kids, right? Like I didn't really know anxiety ever in my life except for those 2 points.
Wow.
How do I keep a team? How do I pay for a team? It's skilled trades. I don't just need a warm body. It's not an assembly line. How do we do this?
Yeah.
We never saw mom and dad do this, right? So we literally took it a day at a time, and something kind of fell in our lap called EOS. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Yeah.
it.
Gino
book-
Wickham.
A book about traction. And it all seemed confusing to me because why would you call it EOS and name your book Traction? But we listened to it over Christmas, shortly before my husband and I stepped back in. And it was like one light bulb moment after another was like, this is why we're having that problem. This is how we're going to deal with this problem.
Who's the implementer in your world?
My husband.
The quiet one.
Actually, he's the integrator. So there's an implementer and an integrator.
Yeah.
And we hired the implementer to really come off of stealth speed because everything we were hearing, if we self-implemented, it would take a long time. And we didn't have time to figure it out. It was go time.
Wow, that is a
was
great story
COVID.
for that book.
Yeah.
Man.
The book is called Traction.
Traction by Gino Wickham.
Kind of their visionary book is called Rocket Fuel.
Oh, okay. I've
That's
seen
kind
that
of the
one.
concept, but Traction
Yes.
is the
deep dive toolbox.
Yes.
Actually, I've read that. You bought me that book.
I think I did.
Yeah,
You
Rocket
should,
Fuel. Yeah,
You should
but
now
not
read
Traction.
it and implement it.
Okay.
Now that you've heard her story,
I'll reread it.
maybe life will change for
Yeah,
you.
it might. It might.
It could be good from here.
You've had corroboration now. The book's validated, so
Correct.
you can read it now.
I think he's got.
Whenever I give it to him, he just kind of he's like,
Casey,
whatever.
that's different.
Yeah, Casey said
yeah.
it. Now he's
Yeah.
a fan.
I think I've developed a new nickname for him.
What is that?
Over the last few episodes.
What is it? What is it? Tell
The
us.
Sultan of Sarcasm.
Yeah, I just got a little something underneath there.
I think it's all about the Santa beard
Yeah.
thing. I think that's
It's a
where it
little
started.
twist of the blade, you know?
Yeah.
No, don't
the
try-
last
don't take
few
the cheap
episodes.
shots. Don't take cheap
He likes
shots.
being called Santa. That's his favorite thing.
Saltchasm.
But he says he has a little something under there with like the calmest,
Yeah.
never get shook voice.
Yeah.
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 That's how he puts
I
the
got
knife
your number.
in. Twists it.
He has a face for audiobooks and a voice for audiobooks.
He has the
He has
voice
a face for,
sure.
radio. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a face for radio.
Why did we go down this rabbit trail?
You
This was
started
a
it.
Paul moment.
You started it.
I
We
was
call
just
it
saying.
Paul moments.
Yeah.
you know?
The Sultan of Sarcasm. Welcome.
Yep.
Welcome everyone. So the leadership team thing and you being the founders, were you the oldest or?
So I actually have a brother who decided to leave the business in 2010 and then finally exited the beginning of 2011. And for whatever reason, he became so bitter that he's not spoke to any of us since, despite the number of times we've reached out. So
Sorry, big bro, if you're listening, reach out.
that's okay. So
The
life goes on. And really, he was really amazing at what he did. He was production manager. And we've been told by so many people, like for cutting tool, and to see the geometry and be able to see 3D before you make it is a gift that not many
Yes.
people have, right?
It is very
And
much a gift.
it's interesting because growing up, he was never a math guy. He was never like we would be partners in chemistry. I would do all the book work. I hated the experiments, but he did the hands-on stuff. I did all the book work, and we aced the class. And a lot of people,
But I think there's a
couldn't.
different. I think that in the math brain, there's some people that are really good at geometry,
yes,
but not algebra.
yes,
It's like two different kinds of brains, and I think he's
is.
probably more of a geometry guy.
correct.
but
And
it
I was
also
the
sounds
algebra
like
girl.
he can see it, not just doing it
Yeah.
from the problematic standpoint.
Yeah.
He's very visionary.
That's a geometry.
Yeah.
thing.
But he and my dad were beyond all the time headbutting over nearly everything. So if there's anything good that happened, it was that things could calm down and quiet down, and it wasn't always in an upheaval of
Yeah.
who won and who said what. But Dad and Mom had seen the vision in 2010. They'd gone to IMTS. Was really starting to about PCD tooling for aluminum. And Dad said, it's now or never. We're going to be on the outside looking in if we don't.
Yeah.
And carbide will probably always have its place, but at that time we didn't know what it would change. So to do the next thing as the visionary, the next project, here he was, right? Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's go time. And so my brother didn't want anything to do with the whole PCD learning process, implementing something new. And that's at the point he exited. But that had been the family longevity plan he would take over.
So
right?
the tools that you guys, you were talking about round tools or what do you call them?
Yes, round tools,
Rolls
cutting
around?
tools.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you go into any Lowe's or Home Depot and you buy just a singular drill bit,
Yeah.
that's a lot of what she would be talking about, except these are high performing.
And you guys say drills, but it's actually the drill bit, right? Whenever you were talking about parts, you were saying, the drills, this, the drills that, but really you're talking about the bits.
So we say we don't make anything that goes into a Lowe's. We can, but to Cliff's point, they're normally, I don't know, made for a homeowner and a hand something or other.
Right.
What we make is high performance metal cutting, or there's a huge range or variety of material that we can do, but it's really set up for machining or manufacturing, something that is like high volume production.
Boring usually.
Boring, milling, reaming, drilling. We've just had customers that have done a significant amount of drilling. So that's kind of what we've specialized in.
And all of these machines are automated. I mean, they're so there's like multiple cutting tools on one thing or something. It sounds
At
like
the customer?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. At her
Yeah.
customer, it would be, she's making the tooling that would go in there. And so,
Yep.
like what's at Lowe's would be considered a tool steel or a high speed steel. It could have some tungsten or cobalt, other things in it. But that's why if you ever have a drill bit at home that you're using and you're like, man, this stupid thing's already dull, that's because you're just using some kind of junk bit that whatever company we won't mention, supplies those groups. The tools that they are making, you're talking about drilling hundreds of thousands of holes in some very, very complex alloys. And PCD, correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, but that's the polycrystalline diamond, right?
Yep.
So they're actually, the part is tungsten. And is it just the tip then that is the PCD?
Yeah, so it depends on what tool, right? But like in a drill, for example, and we can get into this in a little bit, but the stuff we made for automotive that we were asked to extend tool life drastically, we say it was outboard tipped. So if you look at the end of a drill, how it comes down to, the points in the center, and then it comes down on the outside. Originally, our PCD tip drills were only on those corners, but the carbide end was still breaking down. So we had to R&D and figure out how to get that PCD all the way across center. So
you weren't just on the outer edges then because you were getting fracturing around the top piece?
Yep.
Yep. So you had a PCD the entire head.
Yep. Okay. So when they came to us originally and asked us to extend tool life, the carbide was 25,000 holes, shut the line down, pull them out for a regrind. They asked us, please make a drill that would last significantly longer. We came up with a solution that lasted 350, but the PCD was only on those corners. So it's because of the carbide breakdown. In order to get longer tool life, we had to figure that out.
Is this like a month at a time to do that many holes? Or are we talking a week? Or how long does that tool last in actual time, let's say?
So maybe every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, every
That's a lot of tools.
month.
And so you take a typical head that you would buy at Lowe's and pay $5-6 for. This kind of technology would be 100 times that? 50?
Yeah, so carbide drills at the time when
expense.
we were making, and we still do make the carbide version for the same customer. So we make maybe a carbide drill depending on geometry and diameter and length and how much carbide, right? Maybe $200-ish, $225. And extending to PCD, so we've now branded that into something called the Edge X4. And in figuring out how to extend PCD all the way across the end, the time, the materials, all we charge for. We don't mark it up exponentially because it's new technology. We probably should, but haven't.
Yeah.
it can range in the neighborhood of $1,300. So it takes significant education on our part. You can pay 6 to 7 times the amount up front and save millions in the end. So we educate everybody on cost per hole. At the end of the day, for them, because it runs 1 million holes over a 4-year model change for automotive, they're not shutting their line down 40 times in 4 years. So that was roughly 10 times a year of change out.
So it's really, they're
So
not paying anything
it's
really.
free, and they
Yeah.
have millions in operational costs.
Right,
So
right.
it's worth the problem, of course, in purchasing we run up against. You've got that person who is comparing unit price, or do they have the long-term vision to see cost per hole?
Right.
If that company or that purchasing person is only short-term and can only see right here, and I'm comparing your $1,300 widget to somebody else's $200 drill,
They're going to buy the 200 one.
they're
right?
going to
Yeah.
buy the. So we
It's going to seem more attractive just based on the purchase
upfront
price.
costs, acquisition cost.
Mm.
So commonly we weed out customers, or they weed us
can't
out,
see you,
who
yeah.
can't see long term. So we're constantly looking for that customer who have the same vision of cost per hole, because then that's where their savings are.
So if we were talking about brand here, these products are definitely in the high performance.
Yeah.
It's not
For sure.
just I mean, you can put a good enough product,
Yep.
but the good enough product is a fact. It is going to drastically underperform. You can get the same hole, you
Yes.
just can't get the same amount of holes.
Longevity.
Yeah. And so
Yep.
then your cost comes back in from machines being down, which means production isn't being done. You're having to pay people to change out.
And that's what Dad said, coming from machining and production, manufacturing. Their number one thing is to keep their lines running,
Yeah.
to make more of what they're making so they can sell more, right? If you can save that downtime and decrease costs for them, it's a no-brainer for the people who can see it.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting for my industry in the recycling, the PCDs are a problem because it's a polycrystalline diamond, which is equal to carbon. Well, when they go to make the parts back, when you're making tungsten carbide, you have to add carbon to it. And so we don't always know if it's present because there's not an easy way to test for that. So that's something that we've had to watch out for, because they're putting these polycrystalline diamonds on inserts, drills, end mills, the whole nine. So that is something that the recycling industry has had to contend with as
So-
that technology increases.
Because we love people at Tunco. And
Thank you.
Truly. Something that we started offering, and Ray, my husband, thought of offering, which is we thought was a fantastic idea to help you guys on your end, but also our customer end. If they have these drills or reamers or milling cutters or whatever, we literally will do a recycling program for our customer and debraze those PCD, put those in one bucket,
How do
and
you
only
debraze?
send
Oh, you mean just separating when you say debraze?
Yeah, yep. Just take that PCD back off with the braze and the tip, the PCD tip. And because of our customer,
How do you take it off? What do you mean take it off?
special sauce.
Oh, it's a chemical process of some sort or some kind of a process.
Yep, we
A
can
proprietary process.
Yes,
The-
because-
Trade secret.
Trade
Yeah.
secret.
Yeah, Paul's going to
secret.
dig
I have
around till he
questions.
gets to
I know.
I have
yeah,
questions.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
And we need to make a disclaimer here
Yeah.
for
Here he
for
goes.
all past guests, present guests, and future guests, that Paul is going to ask a question that crosses the trade secret line, and it's not going to be answered.
No.
And then he's going to say,
What?
You're not answering.
You're
my
not answering
question.
my question.
You're not answering.
I'm
my
disappointed.
question."
It's like,
You're
I
not
really want to
answering my
know
question.
what makes you distinct in the marketplace and is the key to
Right.
your whole business
Yeah.
model.
So somebody is going to be like, "Hey, Paul, ask the right question, and then I'll answer it."
Okay, so here's an easy explanation. Because
Yeah.
we know how to make it stick, we just unstick it, right?
Yeah.
We just take it right back off.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it is a great question in the sense
Thank
that
you. Thank you
how
very much for
hard
that.
is it to believe that? I mean, if you ever watch one of these drills run or an end mill run under a CNC lathe, the horsepower that it's under, it blows me away. Well, we'll talk about your road pickers for a little bit.
Oh, no.
That
Grinders, yeah.
that grind the road. I mean,
Just
the
one episode.
impact that is happening on those, and it's just brazed on with a little. I mean, just a brass wafer that is smaller than a dime and hairline thin, and somehow that
sticks.
those two pieces are staying together just blows me away.
It's an art.
Yeah.
So recently we had a customer that thought, oh, we'll save some money, right? We'll we'll go to Canada or somewhere else. And they're getting tools back in the box with the tips off.
Yep.
Because
Before they even start.
They didn't even survive shipping.
Oh, wow.
So it is definitely an art process. I mean,
so
you
the
have
R&D
to have the
that
touch.
you do, who you have a department. Trade secrets, no. What? Is your R&D something that you
Trade
guys do?
secrets.
I mean,
We
is it,
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean it's
Trade
far
secrets.
more complex than just taking this part and a piece of braze and making it stick together.
Yes.
Early on in our business, my father started. It was called Cuda Tools, and they made underground tooling for the coal mines, and on a not much larger scale in terms of how many products. I'm talking about just the size of it. You know, they're massive. I mean, you'd have a steel part that weighs 8 or 9 pounds, and then you're putting on this little, you know, I don't know, 20-gram tungsten part on it. And the whole reason why the steel part has to be that big is because the horsepower that it has to fight against on like an underground miner. And then what you're trying to do is when that underground miner is hitting the face of the coal, you're just trying to chip it. You're just trying to block it off. And the fact that those things come in steel with the tungsten attached always just blows my mind. But you are correct. I had another customer that wanted to do the same thing. It's like, oh, we'll just bypass you and do these. And then they run a whole line of bits and they're like, all the tips are blowing off. Can you show us how to do that? I'm like, no, we're not going to show you how to do that. It's like, you can come back and buy my bits that were working just fine, but I'm not going to show you how to do it. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Well, let's kind of stay in the product conversation a little bit. When you mentioned automotive, and I think maybe there's been a little bit of diversification in your business, but what we've seen in the tungsten industry over the last few years is a major concern about EVs and the impact. Because for us in recycling, if tungsten consumption goes down, then that means there's less available. So there's some concern there. Did you all see any impact in your business with EVs coming online? Because, I mean, we use tungsten bits for making the engine blocks, the transmissions, the rear end, like basically all of the stuff, majority of the stuff that goes away with an EV.
Yep.
So I'm just curious how that might have had an impact on.
Thankfully, to date, I don't feel like any, but there's a lot of noise and concern. I mean, just as an owner of a small business, but also we're hearing it from others in the industry. Like if all of those machined parts, as you're mentioning, goes away, what will we make, right? But it's it's the nature of business. If you were in the newspaper business, you probably don't have a newspaper business today.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out how to stay alive or where you are needed. I still believe, and we're seeing it. We're getting some requests for EV. I don't believe it will be to the same extent that it was. To your point about the diversification, we thankfully were one of 4 companies that could help a semiconductor manufacturer successfully drill ceramics. So we know that there's with all the onshoring of semiconductors, we know that there's more people that need what we have. But there's also things like Department of Defense, unmanned drones. They're heavily looking at ceramics just from a heat perspective. So there's all of these other product lines that as a company, it behooves us to keep sticking our nose down every rat hole, as my dad would have said, to stay alive, right? Like if it's not automotive and that product line is changing and that's going away, then what else is still being machined and cut?
What would be the biggest win, for your business? What industry would be like, oh, love to be a primary in that business? Production and manufacturing. Is there a behemoth?
A behemoth for me is by far the Department of Defense because they are the largest manufacturing in the entire country as a whole unit. Because I love to fly and travel, and I'm the space nerd that, like last night, will sit under the stars and watch the meteor shower. Like that is my next. We've had one sailed to NASA, Northrop Grumman. We are now selling the same technology and drilling to their space satellite manufacturing. So when I fly, I used to text my dad. Now I text my husband if I'm not with him. But if you sit and you fly and you look out the window in that, just the wing, you can see all the holes and all the rivets. And we had a competitor, not real clear where their business stands today because they were bought out, but they had all the aerospace for the drilling for the similar technology. Now, even though they were a competitor, they put the same tool in the auto manufacturing that we extended drilling to a 4-year model change to 1 million holes. We beat their performance. So I said, okay, if we can beat their performance in automotive, what else do
We're
they
coming
have?
for you.
We're coming for you.
Yeah.
So aerospace, space manufacturing for sure. I think the semiconductor is kind of a new thought because our team could do something that others couldn't. And there's huge incentives right now with onshoring all of that.
But the semiconductors are that's like a tiny micro kind of a part, is it not? I mean, it wouldn't be like these big chunky.
It is, but they are buying our Edge X4 drill to drill. So as a separate product branded line, this will be the first time that line that my dad helped innovate will reach 7 figures.
Texas Instrument is building a massive plant right here in Texas in Sherman.
Yes.
And I guess because, they're onshoring a lot, like you said, a lot of the microchip business.
Yep. And we know, just like computers, they're on a drive, on a mission to get them smaller. So right now we're hearing, if our information is correct, that the semiconductors are 5 to 12 millimeters. So if they're shrinking the size of those, we have to be able to make micro PCD tools to stay in the game. So that's the next thing on our target
how
is
big
equipment.
are these tools you're talking about? I mean, is this like...
Currently, right now, they're 3-ish, 4-ish millimeter. The end, the drill end itself, the shank that goes in the machine is not that small, but yeah.
And it has to hold up to like 1 million.
Well, these do not.
Okay.
So we tell people it depends on the application and the material. So in aluminum, automotive
Softer.
could get them, yes, softer. In ceramics, it's so abrasive it won't hold up that long. But we did it. It was the only drill that they could use that did a hole, period, and now can last whatever they're
Ceramics
doing.
are one of the most abrasives in the market, right?
But PCD loves it because it absorbs heat.
Yeah. And so when I think of micro drills, I think of, in the scrap world, what we called circuit board drills.
Yep.
So is that is it that size or?
I hope not. I hope we don't have to get that small.
Okay. Because like a circuit board drill, like anytime you see a circuit board, those holes were drilled
Like a paperclip
with a tungsten carbide.
Yes.
No, it's even
teeny tiny.
It's so fine that you have to be careful. The drill part will go into your hand like a needle.
I think that small almost the challenge then becomes, how do you as a human being see to attach the PCD?
Yeah,
it has to become
that's
automated.
in my mind.
Or
when you keep reducing this size, I'm like,
how do we do this?
How
right?
are you going to?
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. That's the next.
And then the scrap
That's the
from
next
that
big
is
thing.
like so little. Is the scrap valuable or no?
Well, so for us, like we've talked about the different types of scrap processing. In scrap, most of that, the technology doesn't really care what the size is. So it can be all the way down to fine powder and it'd be okay. So that's not really that big.
Still
of an issue.
valuable.
Yeah.
And just volume of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to crash the manufacturing part, but I'd love to circle back to your story just a little bit, because just for the leaders, such an interesting situation you described coming back to the company.
Yep.
And there's some opposition.
Yep.
What would you say? Just tell us your story, but then also, like, what did you learn in that? How do you navigate that? How did you navigate that
How would
opposition?
you coach somebody else?
Yeah, I want to hear that, but I also just want to hear her story, and I'm sure we'll learn it. But if you have any tidbits, like, that's all too common, right? Sometimes you're coming into a situation and there's opposition. How did you navigate that, and how could we learn in a situation like that?
We say we played it 5 minutes at a time, literally in the beginning. I mean, especially when he first walks in and the first week the production manager leaves, and then we were like, okay, what can we learn now, right? And one of the biggest pieces we learned when that individual self-selected out was that he was not willing to make new things. So when you're a family-owned business that prides yourself in innovation, even my dad didn't know. They somehow, amongst their leadership team, kept it to themselves that he was only willing to make repeat work. So, all these things come out. And then mom and dad really had a lot of processes that were set up that created a very successful business. And over time, nobody monitored those processes to make sure they were still in place. My dad was, I don't know, a bit of a rebel. I don't need your ISO. We're doing it. We're doing it. So then we said, okay.
What's an ISO?
A quality certification management
ISO
system.
9001. It's if you're going to be in a quality control environment in aerospace, definitely you have to have all these qualifications. Okay. Yeah.
So we put that in place. That was one of the first things that were on our target list. Once we could put processes back in place that made the company successful, then we had to kind of nail it down that people had to be accountable to doing it, right? And it wasn't hey, when the auditor comes in once a year, we're just going to tell them we do this. We actually have an auditor that digs deep, and he's like, show me where they're doing it. So it was kind of skin in the game for everybody. That was kind of the first card that was played. Over time, we called it poker. Let's play this card next and see the effect on our team.
Patient, strategic,
strategy,
yeah.
and it didn't always go with the strategy we thought we had, or it wasn't in the right timing, or it wasn't the person we thought was going next, or so it was really kind of working with the ebbs and flows of not only business volume as work came back from COVID. I think from COVID we lost $2 million pushing $2 million the first year. Then the second year, they said there was a chip shortage and a seatbelt shortage and a this shortage. So then the second year, we lost a good bit of money, and we finally said, we're not doing this again. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're not doing this, right? So it's diversification, putting all the processes in place. So to get back to your part about the leadership team and people, we started with 18, and I think to date we've switched out 13.
So there have been some up until this moment, without getting too specific, that have made the trip.
Have made the trip with us.
That's cool.
Just you and your husband, basically.
That's cool.
Me and my husband, my daughter, and
the dog.
I guess 3 guys on the floor. So there's been people we've hired that, that wasn't the right one either, right? So they kind of rotated too. But there's 2 original hires my dad had that we would say would go to war with us. They have your back no matter what, and you take those people with you through everything.
Yes. Yeah.
So
that's cool.
That's fantastic.
We're trying to figure out how to clone them.
Any
well,
little specific
have
question?
any advice, Cliff?
Yeah, I'm gonna let him go, and then
well, this might be too specific, and obviously, I want to ask it the right way. Any changes of heart? I know that you had to, clean house.
Yep.
And I understand that. Any, without being too specific, were there any changes of heart who saw something a little different in time with your leadership and that approach, or was it? Sometimes it is that way.
They were either with you from the beginning or they just weren't.
They weren't.
I see.
And unfortunately, it got to the point that my dad would call it wound licking. I'm not sure what we call it. Stabbing you in the back. Like, it became a very divided front. You could feel it, taste it, eat it, breathe it, drink it, to the point when you went home every night, I said, what are we doing here? Why do we have this? Or are we going to physically choose to carry the family legacy forward and try to create our own at the same time, keep mom and dad's legacy alive and create our own legacy? And is all of this rebuilding worth it? In fact,
Painful. Yeah.
Great question.
Painful.
it was painful. And my daughter at one point took new head and shoulder shots of me for something that was needed. And we looked back through the photos and she's like, Mom, I think this one is my favorite one. And I was like, why? She said, because there were all these, it was a brick wall. She said, you and Dad have like totally ripped everything down to the studs and rebuilt it brick by brick. And sometimes I have to tell you on this side of it, about the time you think you've arrived, there's a curveball and you're just like, did we get it all? Like, really? Are we there? So we've been on this preaching of a message for one team, and maybe I'm delusional in thinking we can get there, but manufacturing is a team sport. Yes. And when you've got people in different boats rowing different directions and not all playing together, it's impossible. They may be able to make the product on the floor if they're one team, but if us as leadership and the direction of the company cannot get on the same page with everyone and there's still two teams, it doesn't feel like our long-term goals. Can you ever get there, right? So we're constantly reevaluating who's in line with core values, who needs their chain jerked. As a leadership team member, I'm not going to ask you to fall in line. That's a given, or you're out. I'm not doing it. You have my back 100% of the time, no matter what, or you don't belong on my boat. I do not care about the skill you have. I will find someone to replace you.
Yeah.
And you just have to draw the line. In our opinion, it's like parenting, unfortunately. In today's society, not everybody needs that, but some people need. EOS is all about accountability. And what we find, people that don't stay or can't stay or get released, it's all because of the accountability piece.
Yes. You're guarding your culture because the culture is what ultimately drives the success of everything. Yeah.
Well, and we keep saying to our team, as a leadership team, most of us are 50. So you guys, we only have 15 years or like however long everybody wants to work. That's what we have. And if we're not having one hell of a good time being here together, creating together, this whole ride isn't even worth it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I think from my experience, like I could take a lot of your pain points and struggles and be like, yep, got that 100%. One of the things that I am learning in my experience is that when your dad was founding the company, when my dad was founding his company, they don't have a lot.
Yep.
And so there's not anything to fight over. You got what you got.
Yep.
And so people who are on your team then, they're on your team because they want to be. That's it. They're not on your team for any other reason because you ain't got shit.
Yep.
And I mean, like for my dad's first 10 or 12 years, he had to take multiple jobs just to keep things going while he was paying other people to be in his business.
Yeah.
So he's not only having the business, he's working another job. There's no way in the world to recreate that. Yep. I mean, you can go back, even look at some stuff where Bezos founded Amazon and he's got Amazon spray painted on a white piece of paper, like literally spray painted, and it's just stuck to the wall. And he had took his door off the hinges and put it on sawhorses, and that was his desk. Mm-hmm. Like when you're working with a guy, like that's not how people see him today. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't see that guy. And then I think as the business grows in complexity and the old guard kind of starts to fade out, there's questions of, okay, can the new guard do it? There's protectionism to where it's like, hey, I've been doing this and I've been doing it this way for this long and I'm just not willing to give it up. Where, I mean, I've had guys that they don't even want to cross train somebody.
Same.
Because they're, it's because, well, I'm afraid you'll ship me out. And I'm like, dude, my family's been paying you for 40 years. And all of a sudden, we've been faithful for 40 years. And you think, because I want to train a new guy in case you die of a heart attack that I'm trying to ship you out. I mean, like grow up. Like, it's like to the kid, it's like, why are we dealing with that? But I just think as a business grows, what I'm finding is you cannot over or underestimate how important it is to be mindful in each segment. Like, I don't care how mindful I think I've been about something, onboarding, coaching, recruiting, cross training, whatever it is. When I feel like we're there and we've made it and I've been mindful enough, something comes and kicks me right in the teeth and is like, yeah, no, I'm not even sure we've started down this path yet.
How it feels.
And so what was hard for me, Kaci, was really embracing the mode of being a little bit of a chaos coordinator, problem solver, because I'm more like when I hear you talking about your dad, like thinking about this next phase or that, like the visionary, that's what gives me life.
Me too.
This other stuff is just like,
Draining.
I feel like Al Pacino whenever he's in The Godfather and he's like, I feel like I'm out and they're pulling me back in. You know, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
So I definitely empathize with you on that. And it is the challenge of being a small business owner, a family business. And to be quite frank, it's why a lot of them are for sale today. Because a lot of
It's hard.
a lot of second gens. In fact, you know, we've talked about a couple companies who are doing some acquisitions right now. And if you look at private equity, a lot of their main targets are first generation founders who their kids just yeah, well, and some of it's not that they can't. Some of it's just like they've seen what their parents went through, and they're just like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Right. And now you take post COVID, where everybody, didn't matter what age you were, had to look mortality in the eye to some degree. Yep. We all had people who were touched by that in some way, shape, or form. Yep. And so this iGen that's coming behind us are like, you know, I'm not sure my priorities are that I want to work 60 hours a week to make $100,000. You know, it's like, hey, I live in Madisonville, maybe 50 is okay, and I'm going to work 40 and drink Mick Ultra, but I'm still going to be happy at the end of the day. And it, you know, when you experience, like you said, the pressure and the stress and everything, it's like, and then you lost $2 million and you're taking on all the risk. You're like, yeah,
I think it's kind of a calling almost, though. It's like an addiction where you really can't, you're not going to give up on it. You know what I mean?
Well, and at one point, I think I even had to say that this isn't how it ends. I choose my story. Like, you're not kicking me out of my family business.
Yeah.
You had your fun. Now you're going to play on my terms.
Yeah.
Because Dad's no longer here to protect you, and let's all grow up and be adults.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
We call it plate spinning. So as an owner, there used to be an old Wii carnival game, and they're all lined up and they're in a row, and you think the first one you started is going to slow down, and that one's still humming, and then you run to the other end to go get the one you didn't think was going to slow down to give that some more juice, and it's just part of it. Did I answer your questions about the story?
I think so. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the one decision that you made that's made the biggest difference in your business, and you're like, maybe you didn't even realize at the time, but it's like that's been a change factor for us, or a life-giving or income or whatever?
I think one, we make so many decisions all the time, as you all know. It's hard to think of just one. I think, and maybe it's because it's such in the forefront of my mind. It's such a big piece of what I do as the visionaries, painting the picture over what the EdgeX4 can do for people. Like, I really believe it's changing the face of manufacturing. So it has become almost my personal mission. It's right now in a day and age where there's tariffs and saving money and doing this and doing that. It's getting people to open their eyes that this is the value we're bringing you. And it's so much more than shaving 5% off upfront to a competitor. We're talking millions of dollars. And when you can be belly to belly to somebody, we had the pleasure of talking to the right people at Toyota recently. We've done business with for eons, but it's been very minimal for the most part. And it's usually just PCD tooling, not the drill, So to paint the picture and hear what we've done for other people and to tell them what was possible, one of the guys on the floor said to our team, the production manager, to us, you know, before you guys stepped in to manage the business, I think I made like 12 of these a year. And now we're making thousands. And it's our first year that it's 7 figures in that brand alone. And I think if anything excites me, it's that
one technology has made the difference.
The drill.
And what'd you say that product was called?
The Edge X4.
The Edge X4.
You think Tunco could make some of those?
EdgeX4.com.
I think my main thing is I just want to keep getting her scrap. So she keeps me a happy
You just
camper.
want the
being
crumbs
scrap.
that fall from her table.
I'm just wanting the crumbs from her table. All right. Well, that's time for us. We got one more thing.
Okay.
Can you tell us somebody in your life that you've read about, known, look up to that is a misfit for you?
And let me hear your official definition of a misfit.
They did it different, right?
Yeah, they did it different. We've heard everything from Jesus to Jimi Hendrix. So
Okay, so my misfit story would be to actually a mindset coach of mine. Her name is Laura St. John.
okay.
And I believe we live in a day and age where, I don't want to say people prey on fear, but so many products we're sold to because of our mindset.
Yes.
You don't love how you look. You're too ugly. You're too fat. You're this. You're that. You need a pill for this. And so much of what we do in my belief in everyday life, but it affects everything. Our relationships, our business is so much about mindset that when I found her, it was like, well, it was in this time of stepping in my dad's business that, could I really do this? You're in the sales role. I've been in the accounting role. I don't know what I'm doing.
Sure.
I don't have the contacts. I don't know anyone at Space Accounts would have seemed like such a huge stretch at the time, but now we've been invited to NASA. And it's largely, she knows this. I attribute a lot of it to the work I do with her because it is just believing that it's possible. We have our customer sales breakdown. Because we're rural Ohio and we love to hunt, we've broke down based on hogs clear up to moose, depending on the size of it. And over the years, I heard my parents say, well, it takes so long to get the big boys on board. And then you get an initial order and they have to test and all this stuff. And Laura said to me one day, what if a moose would just land in your lap? Mm-hmm. And I remember just thinking, is that even a thing? Like, is that even possible? But yeah, it's a thing.
Laura, what was it?
Laura St. John. She has a
John.
website called Strong Confident Living. And she's in brainstorming, because I knew you guys would ask this question at the end of the podcast, because I watched some. I haven't told her, but if you want to reach out to her, I can send her information.
Yeah, Laura St. John, if you're listening, let's go. Come be a guest on the pod.
There you go.
Where did she get her chops?
Say again?
Where did she get her chops? Where did she...
So, Laura St. John is, do you know the name Livy Dune? Livy is a gymnast that just graduated from LSU. And
oh, yes, I do. Yes.
She's
Yes.
Livy's aunt, and she's also Livy's mindset coach. And I was like, holy moly.
She's the one that got all the harassment stuff, right?
I'm not sure about that part.
Okay.
She was at one point recently like the highest female paid athlete.
Yeah.
So, and I said, let's
So
go.
you do it for her?
Let's go. Then what's available to us, right? And it's just having that abundance mindset, because so much of the time we block.
So how's your floor routine? Are you doing bar and vault and all that? Yeah.
No. I am working on a personal journey, down 22 pounds since the first of the year.
Congratulations.
I hurt myself just tying my shoe, Yeah.
But even leg pressing 460 pounds.
Come on.
Working with her, I didn't ever think it was possible, right?
You got me if you're at 460.
I'm at 460.
Whoo! Way to go. All right, guys. Well, it's been another episode of Misfits Social. Casey, it was so wonderful to have you and hear your family story.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, congratulations and great story. That's a wrap, boys. Let's go.
What's the matter with Misfits?